Hunt, grow, survive. These are the words of a small indie survival game, one that would define the genre and carve the path for many others to follow. With over 600,000 players, it is now the largest and most famous dinosaur survival game on the market. But imagine if we could go back in time. A time way before success. Back across 5 long years. Back to where it all began. This is the history of the Isle. In this video, we will revisit the Isle all the way back to its initial launch, and follow its development throughout the years to the game that it is today. Note that some maps, mechanics, and features of the game can't be shown due to the lack of servers, as well as time, since there's more than 500 updates. However, this will cover most of the game's progress, so sit back, grab a cup of tea, some popcorn, and enjoy the video. December 2nd, 2015, launch day. No monitors, no V3, no Fania, no hypos, no progression, no music. Just you, a flat image, and a menu. We go to the settings, and only the graphical options are shown. We hit play, and that takes us to the server list, which there's none. By hosting a private server, we see a very rudimentary set of options, and a map that most of you never saw before. Isle Mesa. Survival and progression didn't exist yet, only sandbox under the name of Deathmatch. Inside the game, we can see the OG dinos. Shant, Pew, Austro, Galley, Carno, and Rex. Each dinosaur comes with several unique skins, varying from dark greens to vibrant blues. There are no calls yet, only F calls, which due to its length seems to have had a different purpose back in the day. What there is, however, is the presence of AI, although very basic. They don't attack or flee, they merely exist, following undetermined paths, much how current AI operates, for the most part. But it's somewhat impressive to see the existence of AI right from the start. Resting, hold turn, and other similar mechanics are not present yet, and drinking and eating must be pressed manually instead of holding down the E button. At the first glance, it seems there's no HUD. There actually is though. Even though there's no stamina bar, as you can see on the bottom right corner, the outlines of both food and water storage become more opaque over time, letting the player know how thirsty or hungry their dino is. Very good for immersion and vision clarity, but it's not very practical, since it doesn't give the player a concrete estimate of how hungry or thirsty the dinosaur is, or how much time said dino has left before starvation or dehydration. There's also no fall damage, bleed, or bone break. Isle Mesa is a very small map covered mostly by dense jungles, small tall mountains, and long rivers, surrounded by a vast ocean. We can also find both camps and ruins throughout the map, assets related to the game's lore. The LODs are something to be desired, but the lighting doesn't seem too far from what we have currently. Despite night vision not being implemented, nights in this version are clean and pleasant to the eye, adding the dark atmosphere of the night sky without impeding the player's vision. Ignoring the outdated textures, the map's layout is not abhorrent, although improvements can certainly be made. This was only the beginning of the journey, and a lot more has yet to come. January 30th, 2016. Almost 2 full months have passed, and we can already detect some differences. A new UI, and the presence of a main menu music. The settings have now a fourth option dedicated to the game's controls. When hosting a server, you can see that there's 2 additional maps, Region 1 as well as 2. Inside the game, we can also see some UI changes. 2 separate sections dividing herbivores and carnivores from each other. However, skins have been removed for some reason. The first roster addition to the game has also been released throughout the last 58 days. Our lovely mega turkey, the Therizinosaurus. Interestingly enough, Theri was, at the time, the fastest dino in the game, and with no stamina to speak of, he could easily traverse the entire map in a heartbeat. Calls have also been added, all 4 of them. And for those who are wondering how the T-Rex sounded like, HUD has been changed, displaying a meter in form of a leaf for herbivores and meaty ribs for carnivores, which depletes over time. Isle Mesa seems to have noticeable differences, with new vegetation and a lot less water. It's a solid improvement for how it was back in December. Region 1 has a different spin on its layout, displaying a mostly flat surface, open areas, and very few water sources, which promotes exploration and migration. Still a small map, Region 1 has increased size in comparison to Mesa, and with the elevation not being very irregular or extreme, traversal is more appealing. Region 2 is a completely unique map, however, with its own textures, models, lighting, shadows, and shaders. It is clear that this was a test for future maps. One thing that can't be discredited, though, is how beautiful the game looks on this map. The culmination of all the small improvements made here create a level of visual detail that I personally never saw before in the Isle. Aesthetics aside, graphically, the game never looked as good as this, which is even more impressive when we remember that this is present in the game barely 2 months after the game's launch. It only shows its potential. February 21st, 2016. Same menu, same settings, same maps. Skins are back, with some additions on top, and 3 more dinos have been released. Dryo, Trike, and most importantly, the Dibble. In-game we can see a new yet familiar HUD, one that would be the standard for years to come. Dinos can now rest, increasing stam regen until they get up. Mesa changed drastically, being now a landmass rather than an island, surrounded by an endless grassland. Jungles are now temperate forests, less dense than before and containing much more open areas, similar to Region 1. Water sources have also been reduced. Region 1 didn't receive any changes at the time, unlike Region 2, which has now water sources, as well as some landscape changes. All in all, drastic improvements have been made. Updates done almost daily until now, and the game's future looks promising. March 17th, 2016. Yet another dinosaur edition. This time, the Stegosaurus. None of the maps had significant changes during this time, excluding Region 2, which had their previous shaders and lighting removed. A strange and sad change, but hopefully it will return. Group system was added, akin to what we have currently. At this stage, the game was moving forward on a frenzy pace, having several patches a day at times, although most updates are dedicated to the back end, meaning that not many assets, features, or mechanics have been added, despite the insanely fast patch releases. Austroraptor Pounce was introduced, removed, reintroduced, removed again, and reintroduced several times since the game's launch, being one of the most troublesome mechanics in the Isle's history, and probably the one with most iterations of itself until now. Another mechanic introduced was Bone Break, very similar to how it is today, except that at this time, all dinosaurs had a chance of Bone Break, and it seems that it was directly correlated to the opponent's health discrepancy, meaning that the higher the player's HP in relation to their opponent, the higher the chances of Bone Break. Although not perfect, this first iteration of Bone Break seems to be much more balanced in comparison to how it is today. At least Raptors are not the only ones with this mechanic at the time. Still, no fall damage, however. April 9th, 2016. Audio and gameplay options have been added, completing the settings tab. 4 new dinosaurs have been released as well. Maya, Anki, Aloe, and Suko. And finally, after 4 months of the game's launch, fall damage has been implemented. The night sky has been changed, having now an almost pitch black appearance, keeping the luminosity levels intact, resulting in a weird illusion, as if the game didn't have a skybox. Mesa had more visual alterations in the form of new flora, as well as some minor graphical additions. Region 1 received the same treatment, and Region 2 once again gets the most drastic changes of the 3, with new forest areas, lakes, the addition of ruins similar to mesas, while creating some landmarks that would stay for the rest of the map's development. Region 2 seems to be the one getting the most attention, with the assumption that this is the definitive map in the near future. Only time will tell. May 15th, 2016. 2 new dinosaurs have been implemented, Pecky and Rara. The bleed mechanic has also been added, although unfortunately I couldn't record it since AI has been completely taken out of the game. Mesa and Region 1 are unchanged. Only Region 2 is the only one being updated at this time, with even more vegetation changes, as well as some rock formation adjustments. However, these are not the only changes to the game this month. 2 new maps have been added. The first is Misty Valley, a massive plateau filled with dense temperate forests and swamps on the lower areas. all surrounded by endless grasslands and deep thick fog. A map that I personally never saw before, either in game, videos, or even in forums. And although it beats the record for the worst LODs ever, it is a very interesting map, with some original ideas, and something that would definitely be a fun alternative to the older maps at the time. The second map, though, is one that all of you should recognize. This is the first iteration of V3. Even though it's completely barren, with no water, food, or even vegetation in sight, we can already observe similarities to its layout and rock formations to the map that we have today. Besides, the name is on the map. Not even a year has passed, and we already have one of the biggest, most popular, and recognized maps present in the Isle. Popular, not favorite. With still half of 2016 ahead of us, there's still much more to come, and much more to discover. July 26th, 2016. There's now a new Rex model, as well as juvenile and subadult stages, having their own sounds, animations, and values. Even though it hasn't been full released yet, the first stages of progression were introduced as a tuggable option on the server menu. For those unaware of what progression is a game mode where players start with the same dino, in this case the Dryo, and accumulate points over time as long as they keep themselves alive. Dinosaurs were divided into several tiers, each one costing an increased amount of points depending on the dino selected and its relative tier. Dinosaurs had also requirements, meaning players would need to play as a specific dinosaur in order to progress to the desired dino. Even though this mode doesn't close the gameplay loop that the Isle so desperately needs, it gives players a sense of progression, a fundamental aspect in long-lasting video games, just as the Isle. Excluding the new Rex model, it seems that there's no more additions to the game roster. However, if we select the experimental options on the server settings, Quetz is ready to launch. Fucking name, I need to stop this. Suffice to say that Quetz is, without a shadow of a doubt, the king of speed, putting galleys to shame. The flying controls are very elaborate, however, feeling more like a glorified spectator mode camera than an actual flying creature. Still enjoyable nonetheless. Now that we have the ability to fly, we can explore the maps in a way that we never experienced or will experience ever again. Flying high in the sky only shows how small the maps were back in the day. With the servers at full capacity, the game would feel more alive than ever. Despite the maps not have been changed excluding V3, bugs are starting to swarm the game, making certain maps to the point of unplayable at times. Updates are less regular than before, resuming to one patch every other day or so, and sometimes several days without any changes. Nothing alarming. Not every game could keep the insane update speed that the Isle devs had in the past, but it's still a noticeable difference, and maybe a foreshadow of what is yet to come. September 8th, 2016. All maps have been removed, with the exception of V3, although it's also not available on hosting a server option. In their place, a new map was added, Test 4X. Sandbox was also removed, being replaced by Progression under the name of Survival. Fortunately, not everything is bad news. Since July, 3 new dinosaurs have been released: Utah, Baryonyx, and Acrocanthosaurus. Test 4X is, well, a test. Similar to Mesa in size, it's comprised of a beach-like sand desert, followed by a vast forest of tall trees, with short mountain ranges in between. The removal of so much content is worrying. Perhaps it's the calm before the storm. Or maybe the storm is already upon us. March 6th, 2017. Main menu background has changed, displaying an in-game scene of a nest underneath a fallen trunk deep in the forest. As you can see on the menu, mod support has been released, opening the game to endless possibilities, although at the time was mostly used for map creation. New dinosaurs have been added since the last covered patch 7 months ago: Taco, Vilo, Spino, Giganotosaurus, and to my genuine surprise, the Hyporex. Sandbox is back, as well as yet another new map, V4. With V4 came new shaders, and even though it's not as detailed as the ones present on Region 2 back in January 2016, this new graphical addition improves the game's visual quality. Sadly, the map seems to be broken at this time, being impossible to move. Fortunately, with mods at full swing, most part of the player base would be playing on modded maps anyway, diminishing the issue to a degree. AI, growth, and nesting mechanics are now a toggable option, although non-functional on hosting private servers. The growth system would work in conjunction to progression, having the player to reach adulthood on their current dino in order to start gaining points, turning the game into a much more hardcore experience, since AI didn't exist anymore. The game's updates have been consistently slowing down over the past few months, indicating that the devs decided to opt for fewer, bigger updates in contrast to rapid-fire mini-patches. The game's progress has been steady and solid. The question is, however, how long will this continue? April 29th, 2017. The main menu scene has been adjusted, as well as with new lighting. The UI has been reworked, adding character to the aisle while improving the user experience with quality of life changes. Avaceratops is the newest addition to the game's roster. V4 has been removed, and a new map took its place: Pillar of Creation, an absolute gargantuan map, covered by a sea of grass, surrounded by giant mountains. This is the absolute biggest map that I ever saw in the Isle. It surprisingly surpasses current V3 in size, something I wasn't aware it was possible. Sadly, the map is an empty wasteland, with no food, water, or anything but grass really. It is yet another test level that, assuming the dev's pattern, will be yet another map being eventually removed, subsequently replaced by a new one. On a lighter note, nesting is now functional, having a very basic UI and very simple mechanics, functioning ironically exactly the same way as current nesting. Ambush has also been implemented, increasing predators' running speed after a short charge time while crouching. On top of that, night vision was added as well, and since there's no night time on this map,
Hey, you're finally awake.
dinosaurs also leave corpses after being eaten a certain amount now, a mechanic present currently completely intact. At this point, we can start to see patterns of the game's development. One step forward, one step backwards, things getting added and removed constantly to what it seems to be a never-ending cycle. All there's left is to see how far the cycle will take us. June 10th, 2017. All maps have been removed, with only the usual test level remaining. Although it's not a major issue since modding is already implemented, it makes us wonder the reason behind such decision. In the meantime, 2 new dinos joined the game's roster, Kama and Oro. The replay system has finally arrived, not only helping the process of debugging the game, but also supporting community servers, being a great feature regarding the delivery of evidence in case of rule breaks. The game seems to be progressing on a decent pace, although the relations with the official map seems to be rather unstable. July 5th, 2017. On a fortunate turn of events, Region 2 is back. With new vegetation and most recent graphical improvements, this map looks vastly different to when we last saw it 12 months ago. For the first, and probably last time in the game's development, we can now explore caves, varying from short tunnels to beautiful subterranean puddles. A great improvement, and very welcome return of one of the most favorite maps in the Isles community. However, the surprises are not over yet. Redwood is a separate level containing a vast redwood forest, alongside functional rivers and other assets that I never saw before on any previous map. The level would be placed inside V2 later down the line. On its own merit, however, Redwood is just absolutely gorgeous. With amazing high quality textures, unique lighting, and a sensational atmosphere, it is arguably the most beautiful map ever officially released into the public. On top of new maps, a new mechanic was introduced as well, Scent. Very early into development was a toggle that would reveal players' tracks through bright yellow dusty clouds wherever they went. Despite no new dinosaurs having been released this time, several dinos have been remodeled. Aloe, Trike, and Devil, being the last two the current models for the respective dinosaur. A surprising improvement, with the reintroduction of fan-favorite maps, new mechanics, and remodels. The game continues forward towards the end of 2017. August 25th, 2017. Alongside sandbox and progression, survival has also been introduced, with only the Rex as a playable option. 3 new dinosaurs were released as well: Alberto, Suraro, and Ilo. On top of that, Stegosaurus was remodeled to the one that we have currently. Dinosaurs have gender now, having slight variation on their skin's patterns as an indication. Speaking of skins were removed, never to be seen again. Unlike Region 2, which had minimal changes, Redwood received significant improvements to its layout, increasing its verticality, as well as the implementation of lakes, waterfalls, and swamps. Great progress on a very promising map. October 18th, 2017. Region 2 changed significantly, with an entire new vegetation set, fog, and a slight lighting change. The map looks incredible. On survival, Carno is now available as a playable option, having hatchling, juvenile, subadult, and adult stages. As for new mechanics, the oxygen meter was implemented, making dinos unable to breathe underwater. At this point, many of you will be asking, but where's V3? The answer for that is, it's in the game, and at this time, not only is being played on community/official servers, but it's also being worked on and updated for months. The reason why I don't display the map anymore is because, well, I can't. For some reason the devs decided to permanently remove V3 from the server hosting section of the game. In fact, you can check it right now. If you go to host a server inside the game, you won't see V3 there. A weird decision, but in the end, it's harmless, since people don't play the Isle on a single-player server anyway. January 19th, 2018. A new era to the Isle has begun. The current UI has been implemented for the most part. That includes main menu, settings, mods, server list, loading screen, character select, dev screen, and so on. On survival, Utah joined the roster, being the 3rd dinosaur at this point. No new dinosaurs or remodels were released throughout the last 3 months. Instead, mercenaries and tribals joined the ranks. Very limited on their gameplay, they were released into the public for testing purposes, although they wouldn't stay for long. Redwoods was removed, joining the dozens of scrap maps that the game gathered throughout the years. In its place, the first implementation of Thania came to be. Sadly, I couldn't record it since it's not available on private server hosting at this time. A lot has changed, and even more is about to. May 10th, 2018. The Isle has now a new logo and art. Thania is now available to be used on a private server. Not very different from its current form, the map came with new features never seen before, such as volcano, geysers, small endemic life, and something that I honestly never noticed before: weather. T-Rex received his last remodel to the one that we have currently. Since the beginning of 2018, a few members joined the survival roster: Giga, Gally, and Trike, which I completely didn't forget to record it. The Giga also received some attention by getting a new adult model. And finally, the very last dinosaur being introduced on Legacy: the Para. Para went straight to survival, never to be implemented on progression, which was a dying game mode at this time. This marks the beginning of the modern Legacy Isle, and we are very, very close to its end. August 8th, 2018. 3 months have passed since the last Isle update, but with it came a lot of changes. Survival is now the dev's full focus, with 6 new additions to the game mode's roster: Dryo, Maya, Aloe, Surato, Dilo, and Dibble. Yuta received the new adult model, as well as Aloe. Sand has been updated, now also displaying water sources, corpses for carnivores, and edible bushes for herbivores. Alongside this mechanic, night vision was also updated to the version that we have in 2021. And after a long while, AI was added once again. The game has received less and less updates, to the point of several months going by without any patches or changes. Despite each new update has a significant amount of content, the time discrepancy between them is worrying. Not a good sign for the game's future. And there will be no news for the rest of the year. Current year. Despite almost 3 years have passed, not much has changed since 2018. Mods were removed completely. The in-game HUD was changed. Rivers now flow across both Thania and V3. Pre-made skins were replaced by the current skin system. Peki and Suko were both fully remodeled and added to survival. And this marks the end of Legacy. Acro, Alberto, Anki, Astro, Ava, Barry, Kama, Herrera, Oro, Taco, Pew, Quetz, Shant, Spino, Stago, Theory, and Vilo sadly never came to survival, being forgotten in the sandbox abyss. Mesa, Region 1, Misty Valley, Region 2, and many, many other maps would never return. Mechanics removed, features unfinished, upcoming dinos never to be released. Throughout its 5 years of development, the isle changed to a degree that I never saw before, for better or for worse. But even though the game has evolved greatly since 2015, its potential is still to be unleashed. And with Evrima on the horizon, the game's future remains uncertain. Thank you so much for watching, and stay safe.